Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Dan, and for 11 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage. I built a life with my wife, Sophia, through love, through trust, through the quiet moments that made a house feel like home. I never doubted her, never questioned where she was, what she was doing, or who she was with. Until the night I decided to surprise her on our anniversary. That night, I walked into a truth I never saw coming. A truth that shattered everything. And in that moment, standing in the shadows of a dimly lit restaurant, I realized the woman I loved was already gone. I always believed that after 11 years of marriage, I knew my wife, Sophia, better than anyone. I knew the way she laughed when she was nervous, the way her voice softened when she was about to ask for a favor, and the way she'd wrap her arms around me at the end of a long day, as if I were the only thing keeping her grounded. But lately, something had changed. For the past 2 months, Sophia had been distant. At first, I chalked it up to stress. She had been promoted at work, though the promotion wasn't quite what she wanted. A new manager, Mark, had been brought in to oversee her department instead of her, and she was furious. She spent hours complaining about how unfair it was, how she had worked harder than anyone else, and how she was determined to prove her worth. But over time, the frustration in her voice disappeared. She stopped venting about Mark and instead started talking about teamwork and compromise. The long hours at the office stretched even later into the night. And worst of all, she stopped reaching for me. I tried to ignore it. Every marriage has rough patches, right? And I wanted to believe we were just going through one of those phases. Still, as our anniversary approached, I decided to do something special, something to remind her of what we had. I planned everything in secret. Sophia had a business trip scheduled during our anniversary, and she had told me she couldn't make it home to celebrate. It stung, but instead of arguing, I decided to turn it into a surprise. I'd show up at her hotel, sweep her off her feet, and take her out for a romantic dinner. I wanted to see the excitement in her eyes, the way she used to look at me when we were young and in love. I was so sure this would fix everything. That morning, I walked into my boss Craig's office, my phone already in hand. "Craig, I need the weekend off," I said, knowing full well it was last minute. He barely looked up from his paperwork. "Where are you going?" "I'm flying out to surprise Sophia for our anniversary." Craig chuckled. "A man in love. I respect it. Just don't forget to knock before entering any room, huh?" I laughed, but there was something about his joke that unsettled me. Still, I shook it off. After securing the time off, I headed to Craig's secretary, Rosa. If there was one person who could get me a flight at the last minute, it was her. "Rosa, I need a ticket for the next available flight to Chicago," I said, leaning on her desk. She gave me a knowing look. "Trouble in paradise?" "Nothing I can't fix," I replied, forcing a smile. Rosa was efficient. Within minutes, she had booked me a flight. "You have 45 minutes to get to the airport," she warned. I barely had time to pack. I grabbed my suitcase, threw in a few essentials, and sprinted to the car. The entire drive, my heart pounded, not from nerves, but from excitement. This was going to be the moment I'd turn things around. At the airport, everything moved in a blur. Security, check-in, boarding, it all passed by in a haze. I settled into my seat, put on my headphones, and let the music drown out my worries. Somewhere between takeoff and the second hour of the flight, exhaustion caught up with me, and I dozed off. I dreamt of Sophia, of our first apartment, where we used to spend Sunday mornings wrapped in each other's arms, drinking coffee and making plans for the future. Of our wedding day, when she looked at me as if I were her entire world. A gentle tap on my shoulder jolted me awake. The flight attendant was offering drinks, but I barely noticed. Something in my chest tightened. I suddenly had this overwhelming feeling, one I couldn't explain. Something wasn't right. I shook it off. I was just anxious about surprising her, that's all. When the plane landed, I wasted no time. I hailed a cab, and on the way to the hotel, I made conversation with the driver. "You ever been to that restaurant over by the Palms Hotel?" I asked, thinking of where I planned to take Sophia. "Ah, the Rosette," the driver said. "Nice place. Real intimate. Perfect for couples." That was exactly what I wanted. I made a mental note to take Sophia there. At the hotel, I checked in quickly and freshened up. My heart pounded with anticipation. Would she be shocked? Would she smile and throw her arms around me, telling me how much she had missed me? I grabbed my phone, ready to call her. But then I stopped. No, This was a surprise. I wanted to see her face when I walked in. I headed down to the hotel lobby, my hands slightly sweaty as I approached the reception desk. The woman behind the counter smiled at me. "Good evening, sir. How can I assist you?" "My wife, Sophia Carter. Is she in her room?" The receptionist checked her records and nodded. "Yes, she's a guest here. Let me call her room for you." I held my breath as she dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. The receptionist gave me an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, sir. There's no response. Would you like to leave a message?" Disappointment flickered through me, but I forced a smile. "No, that's okay. It's our anniversary. I wanted to surprise her." The receptionist smiled warmly. "How romantic." I won't say a word. I nodded in thanks and turned away. Something inside me twisted. Maybe she was at dinner. Maybe she was out for a walk. Or maybe she was with someone else. I shook my head. No, I couldn't think like that. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the bustling lobby, scanning the crowd. I was going to find her, and nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. The hotel lobby was alive with movement. Businessmen in pressed suits, tourists dragging their suitcases, and couples wrapped up in quiet conversations. But I wasn't focused on any of them. My mind was solely on one thing, finding Sophia. I took a slow, deep breath and reminded myself why I was here. This was our anniversary. I wanted to surprise her, to remind her of everything we had built together. Yet, something didn't feel right. My hands clenched at my sides as I scanned the room, searching for a familiar silhouette. I moved toward the restaurant inside the hotel, hoping maybe she had stepped out for dinner. As I walked, my heartbeat quickened, pounding in my chest like a drum. And then, I heard it. A laugh. Her laugh. It was soft but unmistakable, the sound that used to bring me comfort after a long day. But now it made my stomach tighten with unease. I turned toward the sound, my eyes darting past the clusters of people until they landed on a booth in the far corner of the restaurant. And there she was. Sophia sat across from a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with dark hair and an easy confidence about him. Mark. Even from where I stood, I could see the way she looked at him, the way she used to look at me. Her eyes sparkled, her lips curled into a smile that I hadn't seen in months. Her posture was relaxed, her hand casually resting on the table near his. My throat went dry. At first, I wanted to believe it was innocent. Maybe it was just dinner with a colleague. Maybe I was overreacting. But then, as I took a step closer, I saw it. She reached across the table, her fingers grazing his wrist. He leaned in, lowering his voice just enough for only her to hear. She giggled, then bit her lip, the way she always did when she was flirting. I froze in place. Everything inside me screamed to walk away, to turn around, pretend I hadn't seen any of this, and hold on to the illusion that my wife was still the woman I had fallen in love with. But then, he reached for her hand, and she let him. My world tilted. A cold rush of realization hit me. This wasn't just dinner. This wasn't just work. This was something else. I forced myself to move, my feet heavy as I made my way toward them. I felt detached from my own body, as if I were watching the scene unfold from a distance. Then, just as I was close enough to see the details of their expressions, the final blow came. He kissed her, not just a friendly peck. No, this was something deeper, something intimate, something that made my stomach churn and my hands curl into fists at my sides. And she kissed him back. A slow, lingering kiss. Everything inside me shattered. I wanted to storm over, to grab him by the collar and demand an explanation. I wanted to look her in the eyes and ask her why. Why she had lied. Why she had let our marriage turn into this. But instead, I did nothing. I just stood there, my vision blurring as the weight of betrayal settled deep in my chest. Finally, I forced myself to turn away. My fingers dug into the doorframe as I steadied myself. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get out of there before I did something I'd regret. I stumbled out of the restaurant and into the hallway, barely noticing the people around me. My mind raced, my breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts. How long? How long had this been going on? I replayed the past few months in my head, piecing together all the little moments that hadn't made sense. The late nights at the office, the sudden change in her mood, the way she had started pulling away. It all made sense now. I felt sick. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Without hesitation, I turned back. This time, I didn't hesitate to walk straight to the bar, sitting at a table within earshot of theirs. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. And then I did. Mark leaned in, his voice low but not low enough. "I'm glad you didn't let your husband talk you into going home," he murmured. Sophia laughed. "If he knew what I was really doing tonight, he'd lose his mind," she said, taking a sip of her wine. Mark smirked. 2 months already, huh? "Almost 3, she corrected. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. 3 months. For 3 months, my wife had been lying to me. For 3 months, she had been sneaking around, pretending to be the devoted wife while giving her heart and her body to another man. I took a slow, measured breath. I wasn't going to make a scene. Not yet. I wasn't going to let her or him see me broken. Instead, I reached into my pocket, feeling the cold metal of my wedding ring. Slowly, methodically, I slid it off my finger. It suddenly felt so damn heavy. I placed it on the table in front of me, watching the way the dim light reflected off its surface. Then, without another word, I stood up. I wasn't going to stay and watch this any longer. I had seen enough. And now? Now, it was her turn to be surprised. I walked out of the restaurant, my breathing unsteady, my pulse hammering in my ears. 3 months. She had been with him for 3 damn months. The weight of it pressed down on me, squeezing my chest like a vice. I stumbled toward the far end of the hotel lobby, needing a moment to process what I had just witnessed. But I knew I couldn't just leave. I needed to see more. I turned back, keeping to the shadows, my eyes locked onto their table. Sophia was still sitting there with Mark, completely at ease, completely unaware that her husband, the man she had vowed to love, was standing just feet away, watching her destroy everything we had built. She smiled at him, the kind of smile that once belonged to me. Mark reached for her hand again, running his thumb over her knuckles. And then, the final knife to my gut. She leaned in and whispered something in his ear, her lips grazing his skin. Something intimate. Something that made him smirk and nod. Then they both stood up. I felt my body tense as I watched them walk away from the table, hand in hand, like they had no care in the world. Like I didn't exist. I forced myself to follow, keeping my distance. The bustling lobby worked in my favor. I moved between groups of people, keeping to the sidelines as I tracked them. They made their way toward the front doors. The moment they stepped outside, Sophia tightened her grip on his arm, leaning against him like she used to lean against me. I clenched my fists so hard I thought my nails might break the skin. She never looked back. I followed them at a safe distance as they walked down the street, weaving between the evening crowd. My mind raced. Where were they going? His hotel? A bar? Somewhere even worse. Then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife just a little deeper, I saw it. The Rosette. The very restaurant I had planned to take her to tonight. The one I had picked because the cab driver had described it as intimate and perfect for couples. So that's where she wanted to be tonight. Not with me. With him. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pushed forward. I wasn't ready to walk away yet. I needed more. I stepped inside a few minutes after them, the dim lighting and soft jazz music making the space feel even more intimate. They were seated at a table toward the back, a candle flickering between them. Their body language was unmistakable. This wasn't just a meal between co-workers. This was them. Together. I took a seat at the bar, keeping them in my peripheral vision. The bartender approached, but I barely registered his presence. "Whiskey. Neat," I muttered, my voice hollow. I wasn't sure how much time passed before I heard something that made my stomach drop. Mark raised his glass. "To us. To an amazing 2 months." Sophia giggled. "Almost 3. I froze. The glass in my hand felt like it was going to shatter from how tightly I was gripping it. Mark grinned. "You know, if you had just accepted my offer from the beginning, it would have been much longer." Sophia rolled her eyes playfully. "I had to keep up the act for a little while, remember? I am married, after all." That was it. That was all I needed to hear. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. I wouldn't make a scene. I wouldn't lash out. Not yet. But I wasn't leaving without making sure she knew. I turned slightly, just enough for Sophia to see me. For a moment, she didn't notice. She was too busy laughing at my expense. Then, like a cruel twist of fate, Mark's eyes flickered toward me. He barely reacted. He didn't recognize me. I was just another nameless face at the bar dam. But then, Sophia looked up, and everything stopped. Her smile faltered. Her breath hitched. Her entire body tensed as if she had been doused in ice water. She knew. I could see the panic creeping into her eyes. The silent plea, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't heard what she had just said. I tilted my head slightly, watching her. Waiting. She didn't move. Mark, oblivious to the storm brewing, continued talking. We should do something nice for Margaret, by the way. She's the reason we even met in the first place. Sophia didn't respond. She was too busy staring at me, her face drained of color. I smirked, raising my glass slightly in a mock toast. She flinched. I took one last sip of my whiskey, then reached into my pocket. My fingers curled around my wedding ring. It suddenly felt worthless. I pulled it out, rolling it between my fingers. Then, with deliberate slowness, I tossed it toward her table. The small gold band clinked against the surface, landing right between her and Mark. Mark blinked, finally realizing something was off. He looked at Sophia, then followed her gaze until his eyes landed on me. And in that moment, he understood. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Wow, 2 months. That's a special kind of anniversary, I said, my voice calm, almost amused. Sophia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mark narrowed his eyes. Who the hell are you? I ignored him, keeping my gaze locked on her. I still remember my anniversary, I continued. But I guess after 11 years, it starts to lose its novelty. Mark stiffened. Wait. Before he could finish, I turned my attention back to Sophia. Tell him how lucky he is, I said, my voice dropping to something cold and sharp. Tell him he's lucky I'm not at home right now. Because if he was in my house, I didn't need to finish. Sophia knew. Mark shifted in his seat, as if realizing for the first time that he had made a very, very big mistake. I pushed my chair back, standing up. You can contact me when you decide where you want your things, I told her flatly. Then, with one last glance at the woman I once loved, I turned and walked out the door. And this time, I didn't look back. I stepped out of the restaurant, the cold night air hitting me like a slap to the face. My body was tense, my heart still pounding with adrenaline. I had just walked away from my wife and the man she had been secretly involved with for nearly 3 months. I should have left. I should have gone straight to the airport and never looked back. But I couldn't. Not yet. The look in her eyes when she saw me, the panic, the guilt, the raw fear, it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed to hear her say it. I needed to hear, in her own words, the confirmation that everything I had once believed about my marriage was a lie. So instead of leaving, I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and turned back. I wasn't going to confront them again, not yet. This time, I was just going to listen. I walked around the block, finding a side entrance that led to a dimly lit hallway near the back of the restaurant. The place was designed for intimacy, with private booths tucked into corners and soft jazz playing just loud enough to drown out nearby conversations. Perfect for a secret affair. I moved carefully, keeping to the shadows as I found a table close enough to hear them, but far enough to remain unnoticed. And then, the real truth began to unfold. Mark's voice was low, intimate, the kind of tone a man uses when he's confident he has already won. Sophia laughed, a soft, knowing laugh that sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. If he knew what I was really doing tonight, he'd lose his mind, she said, swirling the wine in her glass. My hands curled into fists under the table. Mark chuckled. 2 months already, huh? Almost 3, Sophia corrected him. Almost 3 months. She had been lying to me for nearly a quarter of a year, slipping into bed beside me each night while pretending nothing had changed. Mark sighed. You know, if you had just accepted my offer from the beginning, it would have been much longer. Sophia smiled coyly. I had to play the innocent wife, remember? I am married, after all. She said it so easily. Like it was a joke. Like I was a joke. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Mark's words caught my attention. Sophia raised a brow. Why? Because she's the reason we met, remember? He smirked. She was the one who told me you liked me, even before you admitted it yourself. Sophia giggled. I guess we owe her a favor then. My stomach twisted. Margaret. One of Sophia's co-workers. One of the women who had smiled in my face when I picked my wife up from work. She had known. They had all known. Mark reached across the table, taking Sophia's hand. I meant what I said earlier. You deserve better than a guy who doesn't appreciate you. She sighed, resting her chin in her hand. It's just complicated. Mark squeezed her fingers. Does it have to be? For a moment, she hesitated. Doubt flickered across her face. And I held my breath. Was she going to tell him the truth? That she had no intention of leaving me? That I was still the safety net she would fall back on if things with him didn't work out? But then she smiled. You always know the right thing to say, don't you? She whispered. Mark grinned. You know me. And that was it. That was all I needed to hear. I exhaled slowly, pushing down the burning rage that threatened to spill over. I had everything I needed now. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a $10 bill, and placed it on the table. The waitress appeared beside me. All set. I nodded, sliding the money toward her. Keep the change. She smiled. Thank you, sir. I stood up, smoothing out my jacket, and walked straight past their table. For a moment, neither of them noticed me. They were too wrapped up in their perfect little fantasy, in the lie they had built together. Then, just as I was about to pass them completely, Mark looked up. And then, Sophia did too. The color drained from her face. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I smirked. Well, 2 months. That's a special kind of anniversary, huh? Mark frowned, glancing between Sophia and me. Who the hell are you? Sophia swallowed hard. Ethan. I ignored her. You know, I still remember my anniversary. But after 11 years, I guess it starts to lose its novelty. Mark shifted in his seat. Wait, what the hell is going on here? I let out a slow breath and reached into my pocket. My wedding ring, the symbol of a life I thought I had, was still there. Without a word, I pulled it off my finger and tossed it onto the table between them. It landed with a soft clink, rolling to a stop right in front of Sophia's wine glass. Mark's jaw tightened. Sophia reached for it instinctively, her fingers trembling. I leaned down slightly, just enough for only her to hear. Tell him how lucky he is, I said, my voice low and calm. Because if he was in my house, things would have ended very differently tonight. Mark stiffened, realizing for the first time that he was in dangerous territory. Sophia's lips trembled, but she still couldn't speak. I straightened, giving them both one last look. You can call me when you decide where you want your things, I said coldly. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out. This time, I didn't stop. I had heard enough. And now? Now it was time for her to deal with the consequences. I stepped out of the restaurant and into the cold night, my breath fogging up in the chilly air. My heart was still racing, my fists still clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. But I didn't feel the pain. I didn't feel the cold. All I felt was rage. I had given her everything. 11 years of my life. My trust. My love. And she had thrown it all away for some pathetic fling. I walked down the sidewalk, the sounds of the city buzzing in the background, but they barely registered. My mind was a storm, flashes of her laughter, her whispered words, the way she let him touch her. Almost 3 months. The number echoed in my head like a curse. How many nights had I kissed her goodnight, oblivious to the fact that she had already given herself to someone else? How many times had she come home late, smiling, telling me she was just exhausted from work, while all along she had been with him? I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, my hands trembling. I needed to get out of here. I needed to leave this city, leave this night, leave this entire damn nightmare behind. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my phone and dialed Rosa. She answered on the first ring. Dan? Everything okay? I took a slow breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. I need a flight home. Tonight. She hesitated. What happened? Just book the flight, I said, my voice cold, detached. There was a long pause before she spoke again. There's one leaving in an hour. Can you make it? I'll be there. Hanging up, I flagged down a cab and slid into the back seat. Airport, I said. Fast. The driver didn't need to be told twice. The car jerked forward, speeding through the city streets as I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes. I should have felt relief. I was getting out of here, putting as much distance between myself and her as possible. But instead, all I felt was a gnawing, relentless pain. By the time I reached the airport, the numbness had set in. I moved through security on autopilot, barely aware of the people around me. My boarding pass was scanned, and I found my seat, staring blankly out the window as the city lights faded into the distance. I didn't sleep. I didn't listen to music. I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the window, wondering how the hell I had let this happen. When the plane landed, I grabbed my bag and walked straight out to the parking lot, barely acknowledging my surroundings. My car was parked where I had left it, waiting like a ghost from my old life. Sliding into the driver's seat, I let out a long, shaky breath. And then, for the first time since I had walked into that restaurant, I let myself feel it. The betrayal, the rage, the heartbreak. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as a strangled, bitter laugh escaped my throat. What a joke. All those years. All the memories. Reduced to this. I should have gone straight home. I should have walked inside, locked the door, and figured out my next move in the morning. But instead, I found myself driving. Not home. To her mother's house. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was late. The house was dark, but I knew Deborah was home. I could see the faint glow of the living room lamp through the window. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring. Dan. Her voice was groggy, confused. I'm outside, I said. There was silence. Then, the sound of movement, the creak of a door opening. A few seconds later, she stepped onto the porch, pulling her robe tighter around her. What are you doing here? She asked, her brow furrowing. I stepped forward, my voice calm, too calm. I brought Sophia's things. She blinked. What? I gestured to the back of my car. Her clothes. Her shoes. Everything she's going to need. I figured she might be staying here for a while. Deborah's face paled. Dan, I don't understand. She's cheating on me, I said flatly. Has been for almost 3 months. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like they belonged to someone else. Deborah gasped, shaking her head. No, that's not possible. She loves you. She loved me. I corrected. Past tense. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I saw them. I continued, my voice empty. I heard them. They were celebrating their anniversary together. I let out a bitter laugh. 2 months. Almost 3. That's what she said. Deborah's hands trembled. No, she wouldn't, she couldn't. I let her denial hang in the air. It didn't matter anymore. The truth was the truth, whether she accepted it or not. Turning, I opened the trunk and started unloading the bags onto the driveway. Suitcases, boxes, everything that had belonged to Sophia. Deborah watched in stunned silence, her face pale. What are you doing? I'm done, I said simply. She made her choice. And now, so am I. I dropped the last bag and turned back to my car. Dan, wait. Deborah's voice cracked. You can't just end it like this. She's your wife. I paused, then looked at her. She was, I corrected. Not anymore. Without another word, I climbed into my car and drove away. I didn't look back. This time, I was the one leaving, and I wasn't coming back. The road stretched ahead of me, dark and empty, just like the future I was now facing. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my mind replaying the last hour like a broken record. Sophia's things were now sitting in her mother's driveway. Deborah's shocked face was the last thing I saw before I pulled away. And now, for the first time in 11 years, I was heading home to a house that no longer felt like one. I didn't know what I expected to feel, relief, maybe, satisfaction, but all I felt was a deep, hollow ache in my chest. When I reached my house, I sat in the driveway for a long moment, staring at the darkened windows. This place used to be ours. Now, it was just mine. I stepped out of the car, the night air crisp against my skin. The silence was suffocating. No lights were on inside. No one waiting for me. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The moment I closed it behind me, the emptiness crashed over me like a tidal wave. Everything was exactly how I had left it. Our framed wedding photo still sat on the entryway table. Her jacket still hung by the door. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the air. I exhaled slowly, dragging a hand down my face. I needed to erase her from this house. Without thinking, I grabbed the wedding photo, staring at the smiling faces frozen in time. I barely recognized myself. I looked happy. Stupidly, blindly happy. I tightened my grip and then, without hesitation, hurled the frame against the wall. The glass shattered, pieces scattering across the floor. I didn't stop. I stormed into the bedroom, ripping open the closet. Her side was already empty. I had made sure of that. But still, there were remnants of her, an old sweater, a pair of slippers tucked into the corner. I grabbed them, tossing them into the trash bag that was quickly filling up. The bathroom was next. Her toothbrush, her makeup, the bottle of perfume she always wore. All of it, gone. I moved through the house like a man possessed, erasing every trace of her. By the time I was done, my heart was pounding, my breath ragged. But the house still felt tainted. I grabbed my keys again. I wasn't staying here tonight. I needed to get out. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the street lights blur past me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't be there, not yet. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. I hit accept. Yeah, a shaky breath. And then, her voice. Dan, Please don't do anything rash. I'm heading home. Let's talk. Sophia. I nearly laughed. Talk? Now she wanted to talk? I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. You're not coming home, Sophia. My voice was calm, too calm. Your things are at your mother's. That's where you belong now. A pause. Then, a broken whisper. Dan, please. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. You made your choice. Silence. Then, a quiet, pathetic sob. I should have felt something. Regret, pity, maybe even a sliver of the love I used to have for her. But I felt nothing. I'll have the locks changed tomorrow, I said. Don't bother coming back. And then, without waiting for a response, I hung up. I exhaled slowly, staring at the phone in my hand. The weight in my chest lifted, just a little. This was the end. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, I woke up to an unfamiliar silence. No sound of Sophia moving around the house. No scent of coffee brewing in the kitchen. No quiet hum of her voice as she got ready for work. For the first time in 11 years, I was completely alone. And I preferred it that way. I got out of bed, my muscles sore, my mind heavy from the wreckage of the night before. The shattered picture frame still lay on the floor, the pieces of glass glinting in the morning light. I left them there. It seemed fitting. By noon, the locksmith had come and gone. The locks were changed. Sophia no longer had a key to my life. I spent the day cleaning, getting rid of anything that still carried her presence. The house felt different now, lighter, freer. But the scars she left behind were still there, lingering like ghosts in the walls. Then, at around 3 in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I didn't need to check the peephole. I already knew who it was. I opened the door, and there she stood, Sophia. Her eyes were red, her hair disheveled, her face hollow with exhaustion. She looked at me like a stranger, as if the man standing in front of her wasn't the one she had once promised forever to. I crossed my arms. What do you want? She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. Dan, I shook my head. No, you don't get to talk first. She flinched. I stepped forward, lowering my voice. For 3 months, you lied to me. You came home, looked me in the eyes, and pretended to love me. And now you have the nerve to show up here like you're the victim? Tears welled up in her eyes. I wasn't thinking, Dan. I made a mistake. I let out a humorless laugh. A mistake. I repeated. That's what you call it. I took another step forward, forcing her to meet my gaze. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. You don't accidentally cheat for 3 months. That takes effort. That takes planning. Her lip trembled. I never wanted to hurt you. My blood boiled. Then why did you? She looked away. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she spoke. Dan, please. Just can we talk? Really talk. I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. Fine. Let's talk. Answer this one question, and I'll hear you out. She nodded quickly, desperate. Anything. I held her gaze, my voice steady. If I had done this to you, if I had been sneaking around with another woman for 3 months, what would you have done? She froze. I saw the answer in her eyes before she even spoke. Her lips parted, then closed again. A flicker of shame crossed her face. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she admitted, I would have left you. I nodded, the final confirmation settling in my chest like a stone. Then why the hell should I do anything different? Her breath hitched. She reached for me, but I took a step back. Don't, I warned. You don't get to touch me. Not anymore. A sob escaped her lips. But I wasn't done. You looked me in the eye, night after night, and still chose him. You kissed me, knowing you were kissing him too. And then, after I caught you, after I stood there and listened to you laugh about it, you still didn't stop. Tears streamed down her face. I don't love him, Dan. I swear I don't. I stared at her, disgust curling in my stomach. Then why was he worth throwing everything away? She didn't answer. Because there was no answer. I sighed, the exhaustion finally hitting me. It doesn't matter anymore, Sophia. We're done. Her chin trembled. You really mean that? I nodded. Yeah, I do. She wiped at her tears, her whole body shaking. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. Her face crumpled. Take your time gathering whatever you left behind, I said coldly. But when you walk out that door, don't come back. Because if you do, I won't answer. Her shoulders shook as she turned, stepping past me into the house that used to be hers. I stood in the doorway, watching as she moved through the rooms, collecting the last of her things. She lingered in the bedroom, fingers tracing over the bed we once shared. Then, without another word, she walked past me, pausing in the doorway. She opened her mouth, as if searching for one last thing to say. But there was nothing left to say, so she nodded, her lips pressing into a tight line. And then, just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a long time after she left, staring at the empty street, listening to the silence. And for the first time in months, I felt at peace. Days passed, then weeks, and finally, months. At first, the house felt too quiet. I wasn't used to the silence. No sound of Sophia's footsteps in the morning, no murmured conversations over coffee, no soft breathing beside me at night. But then, the silence became something else. Peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't waiting for the next excuse, the next late-night meeting, the next lie. The air in the house felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I moved on in the only way I knew how, by rebuilding. I redecorated, throwing out everything that reminded me of her. The wedding photos? Gone. Her favorite wine glasses? Smashed. The bed we used to share? Replaced. The more I erased her, the more I felt like myself again. And then, one day, I got the call. It was from my lawyer. Dan, the paperwork is ready. If you sign today, the divorce will be finalized within the next few weeks. I didn't hesitate. I'll be there. I arrived at the office that afternoon, my heart steady, my hands firm as I signed the papers that would officially end my marriage. No sadness, no regret, just relief. And then came the final step, Sophia's signature. I knew where to find her. It had been months since we last spoke, but I had heard things. I didn't go looking for news about her, but people talk. And from what I gathered, life hadn't been kind to Sophia. She had begged Mark to leave his wife for her. But Mark? He was never serious. Once the secrecy, the thrill of sneaking around had faded, so did his interest in her. He stayed with his wife. And Sophia was left with nothing. She lost more than just me. She lost her job, her apartment, the life she had taken for granted. I heard she was staying with her parents now, bouncing between temp jobs, struggling to find her footing. I should have felt bad, but I didn't. When I pulled up to her mother's house, Deborah answered the door. Her face was thinner, older. She had always looked at me with a mix of judgment and disapproval. But now, she just looked tired. Dan, she greeted stiffly. Is she here? I asked. She hesitated, then stepped aside. She's in the back. I found Sophia sitting in the living room, curled up on the couch in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, so different from the polished, confident woman I used to know. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes widening. Dan, I held up the papers. Sign these. Her lips parted, but she didn't argue. She took the documents with shaky hands and scanned the pages. A sad smile tugged at her lips. So this is really it, huh? It was it the moment you chose him, I said bluntly. She swallowed hard, then picked up the pen. For a moment, she hesitated. Her fingers trembled. Then, she signed her name. I watched her. This woman I had loved, had fought for, had given my life to, and yet, in that moment, she felt like a complete stranger. She handed the papers back to me. Are you happy now? I studied her for a long second, and then I smiled. Yeah, I am. Her breath hitched, and for a fleeting moment, I saw something in her eyes, regret. But it was too late for that. I turned to leave, stopping only when I reached the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because I was finally free. As I walked away, feeling the weight of the past finally lift from my shoulders, I realized something. Pain fades. Betrayal scars, but it doesn't define you. And most importantly, life goes on. I had spent years believing in love, believing in trust, believing that if you gave your all to someone, they would do the same in return. But I learned the hard way that not everyone values love the way you do. And that's okay, because love isn't just about what you give to another person, it's about what you give to yourself. Respect, dignity, the courage to walk away when you are no longer valued. For those who have been through betrayal, who have had to start over after years of building a life with someone they thought would never leave, I understand. It hurts. It shakes you to your core. But you will survive. Don't waste time on people who don't appreciate you. Don't hold on to memories of someone who made a choice to walk away from you long before you even knew it. Life is too short to beg for love. Instead, choose yourself. Because at the end of the day, That's the love that will never fail you.